Okay, so we are starting session 4B of From Singleness to Oneness, Embracing the Marriage Designed by God. And I'm going to give just a quick review, just to keep us all on the same page, right? It's easy to forget some parts of the training as we go through adding up each session. But this is kind of like the structure of the program. We are talking about spiritual oneness, emotional, physical, and legal oneness. And we completed the first category of spiritual oneness, and we started last week the section on emotional oneness. And we have asked several questions throughout the training so far. Today we are doing the topic on embrace interaction for emotional oneness, which will deal with conflict resolution. But these are the questions we've asked so far. What model are you using for your marriage? Partnership, 50-50, or oneness model? We also asked, what structure are you using? Do you have the macho structure, the feminine structure, or the oneness structure? We also ask, what compass are you using? The happiness, the success, or the service compass? And last week, we asked a different question. Do you make your spouse feel accepted? And that is where we explore the dynamic that takes place in marriage and also any other relationship where we want to get to the point in which expectations match reality. And when expectations match reality, then the other person feels accepted. But the way that dynamic works is tricky. So you have to learn to lower your expectations on things that are preferential or personality, how people are wired. But you also have to adapt the reality to match expectations when it comes to issues related to character or sinfulness that are things that God says need to be addressed. So that was a very insightful session we had. Today we are going to then continue on the emotional oneness. And this is the key question that we're going to be addressing. Do you know how to solve conflicts? That's the main question. And by the end of the session, hopefully you will say, now I know, at least in theory, but you will have the foundation to move forward in your relationship. So the main idea that we're going to discover in this session is that emotional oneness is protected when we learn to speak truth in love. This phrase, to speak truth in love, is a phrase that the Bible uses to encourage us as people that are trying to seek God and love God, to learn how to treat other people and learn to speak truth in love. The opposite of speaking truth in love is either speaking truth in annoyance or in anger, or not speaking truth, keeping it to yourself, or lying, right? So this phrase of speaking truth in love is at the core of learning to solve conflicts. So I would like to start with two cases, okay? These are case scenarios that we're gonna work on. So since Kelly, you are the newlywed, we'll ask you to go first, okay? So case one, okay, Nathan does not like the way his wife criticized him during lunch. He started to feel distant right away. So what should he do? A, keep it all in and don't say anything because it should go away with time. B, hit the table with his fist and walk out of the room enraged. D, stop talking to her the entire day so she will get the hint. D, none of the above.
None of the above. I think he should let his wife know how he really feels, or his wife may not even know that.
But isn't he letting her know how he feels when he is hitting the table and walking out enraged, or stop talking to her?
Just start. Just talk to her.
Oh, use his words.
Yes,
Okay.
in a gentle way.
In a gentle way. Okay. So you are saying, it's okay to let her know how you feel, but in a gentle way with words.
Yes.
Not just with these over the top reactions. Okay. Let's go to case B then. Kelly, you pick who you want to do case 2.
Eli.
Eli, okay, Eli, here you go. Eli, Sandra is annoyed with her husband because he forgot to take the trash out again. Again, did I forget to say again? So what should she do? A, start nagging him about it so he won't forget it next time. B, yell at him and let him know how stupid he is for forgetting it again. C, complain to her friend about the horrible husband she married. And D, none of the above.
I think she should. Oh, I think it's D. None of those options. So I think she should probably discuss like the root of the issue, because the root of the issue is not that he's forgetting the trash. It's probably like, I feel like you don't help out around the house and I have to do everything. Like there's like other things that are the root problem. So it needs to be discussed, because the fix is not her just taking out the trash, because obviously then it will like annoy her still that he forgot. So it needs to be discussed in like a non-nagging way of like, hey, I need you to help out. Like, what's going on here? How can I help you do this? Like, or I really shouldn't have to help you do this. Like, how do we get this done? And yeah, I don't know.
So try to discern what is the root of the issue.
Yeah.
Rather than say, oh, if I better do it myself, because if I don't do it, it doesn't get done, you know,
Yeah.
and then get all bitter about it. Right. So what you see in these two cases is that you know, the answer D is very obvious, right? But it's not so obvious once you are Nathan or Sandra. You see, once you are in the situation, often many people get entangled in this way of addressing the issues that are bothering them. And the issues can be something on a spectrum of something very simple, not serious at all, to something very serious. But the inability to deal with them in a constructive way is what keeps many couples from growing in emotional oneness. And all of us that have been married have had, to one degree or another, experiences that push us away when it comes to solving these kind of things. So the core thing that we'll be talking about here is learning a confrontation, the ability to speak truth in love, confront the situation, solve it, see what needs to happen in order to move forward, and not just to move on, but to really address it and then move forward together. So we will learn in this session more details, specifically how this works. But before I continue with the details of what this is, the structure of it or the content of it, I want to show you this picture. Look at it for 3 seconds. What is the first thing that you see? What is the shape that you say, I see this?
Circle, heart.
Circle, see hearts. Anything else?
And also purple, and maybe a cross.
Okay, you see purple. Okay.
I see
All right, so
flower.
you see like a flower. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. So this figure has something that illustrates a little bit how these dynamics will work in the relationship. You see, there's this couple that are all lovey-lovey. You know, they want to have a nice relationship. They want an easygoing life. They don't want any drama. So when they start the relationship, they enjoy each other because they realize, oh, you know, you're easygoing. I enjoy being with you. There's no drama with you. So at the initial stage of the relationship, the only thing they see is the heart. See, and they are excited about it. The problem is that there's something that they are not noticing that comes with marriage, and is that part right there. You see it now? That's the potential for drama. See, the potential for drama is right there. And out of the blue, it can fill all the space between you and all the lovey feelings. And suddenly all these feelings of drama and antagonism and frustration starts filling their relationship. So many couples that did not anticipate that to be part of the dynamic of marriage end up, then walking away from each other because that's not what they sign up for. So you did not sign up for a life of drama. You wanted a nice life, didn't you? I mean, you married someone to be together and enjoy each other's company, not to be annoyed with each other. But this dynamic of marriage is not unique just to a bad marriage, it's true of any marriage. So the difference between this couple that is, in this naive approach to conflict in marriage, the couple that has oneness lives within this tension, and they know how to solve conflicts. They know how to speak truth in love. And because they know that, and they have developed it through practice, then the relationship is not governed by drama. It can be perhaps interrupted by it, but they have the ability to address it so it does not take over the relationship. And that's the big difference between couples in marriage. Because if you think about it this way, every married couple will have to face conflicts. That's just part of the picture. But there are two complete different approaches to how you solve these conflicts. And one part of the way this is solved is by doing something that creates distance, while the other approach creates closeness. One approach is very reactive, while the other approach is very proactive. So what you will find yourself is that you are going to enter into relationship. And by the way, this is not unique to marriage. This is in any relationship that you're in that has potential for conflict. And you will see that the way you engage with conflict is going to lead you to distance and being reactive, or is going to lead you to closeness and being proactive. What's the difference between the two? That's what we're going to take a look at now. Let's think about the reactive approach. The reactive approach is the most predominant one. I just observed an interaction between siblings, adult siblings, not too long ago, when one person told the other, "Did you get my text?" And the sibling responded, "Didn't you know that I lost my phone?" And the sibling answered, "That's rude." And the other sibling said, "Well, you are rude." And the other sibling answered, "No, you are being rude." "No, you are being rude," the other one answered. And the conversation went on and on until they started yelling at each other. And that happens all the time in lots of relationships. What is the underlying dynamic of the reactive approach? It works like this. There's a conflict, something that has created tension, whether, like in the case of Nathan at the beginning, his wife criticized him in a way that it just didn't feel good for him. Maybe the words that she chose were not good, the tone, maybe the moment, the time was not wise, who knows? But there's a moment in which there's conflict. Now, for Sandra, it was the disappointment to realize her husband forgot to take the trash again. So any little thing that creates that tension originates a conflict. But then that conflict starts creating that frustration in the person. And that frustration, think of it like boiling water. Starts boiling, getting hotter and hotter until the steam comes out, and it creates a reaction. That is basically how the system works for the reactive approach. It's always the same. You have a conflict, you feel frustrated, and you let the frustration come out. But even though the system is the same, the way in which people face this dynamic changes depending on personalities or learned behaviors. So there are three very common behaviors that people have or display in this kind of approach. One is what I called the defensive approach. See, what do you notice about this picture?
Ready to fight.
I'm ready to fight. I'm already in position. So do you want to tell me something? Get ready, because I'm going to punch you back, right? So what you said was rude. Well, you were rude. Yeah, so that's the defensive. You see that? It's like, you're going to accuse me, I'm going to accuse you. You're going to attack me, I'm going to attack you back. And this person has that attitude of consistently reacting this way of getting defensive. So this way of getting defensive, typically, instead of confronting the real issue, this person tries to find something in the other person to blame, or plays the victim role to make the other person feel bad. Yeah, but you too, or yeah, but you did that the other day too, and always has to feel like there's a need to not be the bad person, or not be portrayed in the wrong way. This reaction is typically characterized by lack of personal responsibility and phrases that the person uses all the time, like that are defensive, like, but you also, right, as I said. But the problem of this technique is that instead of making the spouse feel understood or validated by identifying and solving the issue, this person focuses on arguing or winning the argument. Person wants to be right, and prove you wrong. So this approach naturally causes the relationship to grow distant. So look at what Proverbs, this is a book of wisdom in the first half of the Bible called the Old Testament. In this book of Proverbs, there are lots of short sections that say things that are very truths that are very profound and yet relevant. So look at 16:19. It says, better to live humbly with the poor than to share plunder with the proud. Look at the contrast that it's making. It says, look, it is better to be poor but live with someone that is humble than to have lots of money and live with someone who is proud. What is the contrast between the two? It's not that one is poor and the other one is rich. What is the point that the person is trying to make here? It's that one is humble and the other one is proud. And when you have to live with someone that is proud, man, that's a pain. So it's so unenjoyable and miserable to live with someone that is proud, that you get to the point in which you don't care about having the money, the house, the cars, and you would give anything to have less, as long as you could have someone that is not proud. So the problem with this attitude of being defensive is that it's rooted in being prideful. See, this person is never ready to say, oh yeah, you were right, I was wrong, that was rude. No, cannot say that, because that means I'm admitting that you are right and I'm wrong, and I'm not ready to do that. That's the core problem that this person has. And the attacking, defending is very common. Now, the other one is a silent treatment. What do you notice in this picture?
Nobody's
Ignore.
talking to each other.
Ignoring
I
each
think
other.
we're all giving you the silent treatment right now, actually.
Yeah, right. Nobody's talking to each other. They're silent. But what else did you notice in their body language?
They're not facing each other.
They're not facing each other. So now they are really distant from each other. And it's like, okay, what's going on? There's something going on here. What is it? and they do not know how to approach it. I do not know if you grew up in a home where conflicts were not addressed, and they just, you just move on with life, but never really talked about the issues. If you grew up in that kind of environment, you know what the silent treatment is like, and the silent treatment drives people crazy. Why? Well, the silent treatment, it works this way. Instead of confronting the real issue, it expresses the frustration by not talking about it. So I'm letting you know that I'm frustrated by not talking about it. And the problem is that it's expecting the spouse to do the impossible task of mind reading. You know, it's like you need to know what's going on with me, even though I'm not telling you. Or the person thinks that the problem will go away by itself. I don't want to talk about it. It's no big deal. And, I'll just feel fine after an hour or a day or a week. And the person thinks that if I don't talk about it, it's just going to go away by itself. It does not realize that the issue actually is going to be buried inside. It's not going to go away. And it's going to start, stinking with time and affect the person's attitude. So the problem is that conflicts cannot be solved by not talking about them or by playing the guessing game. You can't. So the longer the couple avoids talking about the problem, the bigger the problem becomes. And consequently, when you see this kind of approach, naturally the couple starts growing apart, because there's no understanding going on. Nobody can understand what the problem is. I would like to understand it, but you don't want to talk about it. And then it's like we are stuck. So there's a proverb that talks about this very issue as well. And it's in Proverbs 18, verse 2. Look at how it says it. Fools have no interest in understanding. They only want to air their own opinions. So a foolish person does something. This foolish person first is not really interested in understanding, creating understanding, dialogue. No. What is the interest that this foolish person has?
Voicing their own opinions, making sure that they're heard, but that kind of goes against the whole silent treatment thing.
Yes, apparently. But you see what this person is doing? This person is not interested in creating understanding. I just want to let you know what I think. I just let you know what I feel.
So
But the
not listening.
silent treatment, what it's doing is that it's letting you know that there's something that's wrong. I want to let you know that I'm not happy. But I'm going to do it in a way that is not creating understanding, because I'm not interested in creating understanding. I'm just interested in letting you know that I'm not happy. So is anything wrong? No. Are you okay? Yes. Are you sure? Yeah. And a day later, it's like, come on, are you really sure that everything is okay? Yeah, I'm just tired. I just didn't have a good night. And that goes on and on and on for 3 days, a week, and a week later, finally, the person says, okay, now there's really something going on. You are very distant. You're not the same. Why don't you just tell me? Finally, the person said, well, a week ago, and then the person starts talking about it. And the whole week, the person was not interested in creating understanding. The person knew, I'm not feeling right. I know I'm distant, but I am letting you know that I'm not happy about something. I'm just not going to let you know what that something is. So that is where it connects, you see. Is giving you the hint I'm not happy, but I'm not going to create understanding. And that is a foolish reaction, because in order to solve it, you have to create understanding. If there's no understanding, there's no solution. So by not talking about it, the person is not only not creating understanding, but is making the creating understanding impossible. So that's why this second attitude is a problem, because a person that is really going to learn to solve conflicts has to learn to create understanding. You see? So there's a third approach that people have in the same reactive dynamics, which is the one I call the grenade treatment. The grenade treatment, as you can see in the picture, that person is ready just to pull the thing, and you will just count till what, 3 seconds, 5 seconds, and you better run out of there because disaster is coming. You can see it on the person's face. It's just, you know, the person is going to lose their cool very quickly, and before you know it, there's huge drama. The yelling begins, the throwing things begins, the holes in the wall begin, you know, and in extreme cases, you know, the physical abuse begins. The grenade treatment is very it's very dramatic, and it causes lots of hurt. If you grew up in a home where there was an alcoholic parent, you perhaps got to see this, because people that are drunk often become violent if they are driven by this anger. So the problem with this approach is that instead of confronting the real issue, it really focuses on letting all the emotions out at once in a dramatic way, and it's just only expressing how the person feels about the issue, but it's not trying to solve it. So I'm upset, so I'm going to let you know I'm upset, and you're going to be very convinced that I'm truly upset. But what are we going to do about the problem? Well, that's not my issue. I don't care. I just want to let you know that I'm upset. So this person typically says very hurtful things that then create emotional distance in the relationship. And the problem is that then later the person is cool again and says, oh, sorry, I didn't mean it. Well, what is that you didn't mean? To tell me that I'm the most horrible person in the world, or that you should have never married me, or that I'm the most stupid person in the entire world? Which one of those you didn't mean? You know? And it's a little bit too late, because you have made the problem bigger. You already threatened to divorce me in the argument, and now you're saying that you don't mean it. So that person that is more the grenade reaction, very emotional, and starts just throwing all these things out, becomes very hurtful. So adding to the conflict that already have, the person is adding now more hurt that then also has to be solved. So these three approaches are the approaches that they together fall under this category of reactive approach to conflict. There's another passage, actually two proverbs, that talks about the grenade treatment, and I want to read them to you. It's 14:7 and 23. 14:7 says, a quick tempered man does foolish things. Very true. You're quick tempered, oh man, you're gonna do foolish things. And 23 says, only fools insist on quarreling. It's like, calm down, you're a little bit too, let me say whatever I want. Look, you know, we're in a public place. I don't care, let people know what I'm feeling, you know. It's like, come on, the kids are gonna hear us. It doesn't matter, they need to know the truth, you know. And it's like, there's no way to control that fool person, because that person is only interested in quarreling, in fighting. It's not interested in anything else. Did you notice that it calls this person foolish also? You know, these behaviors are very dramatic. You know, the person thinks that maybe from yelling is going to help, but if yelling doesn't work, then, you know, I'm gonna help by throwing things to really, that's gonna teach you the lesson and make you do what I need you to do. Now you're gonna remember to take the trash out next time. You know, so it can be very, very dramatic. But all of these three things at the root, they are the outcome of a heart issue. And what Proverbs tells us is that all of these behaviors are rooted on a proud and foolish heart. If you are a prideful person and you are foolish, then these three ways are going to be the ways that are going to describe how you deal with conflict in your marriage. And if that is how you're going to deal with conflict in your marriage, I have bad news for you. You're only going to grow apart, and the emotional oneness that you were meant to protect, now you are destroying with your own hands. So once you look at it from the perspective of how the Bible describes these things, it's not just an issue of, do you know the techniques to solve conflicts? It is more a deeper question that is about, do you have the right heart? You know, that's kind of like the bottom line question. Are you a prideful person? Are you foolish? Because if that is at the core, then that's where you need to work at. And the only one that can, you know, change a heart really from within is God. You know, He can transform, He can heal. So the issue that, you know, we use this language, emotional intelligence. The issue with all these people in their relationships is that they lack emotional intelligence. They do not know how to deal with their emotions, deal with the other person's emotions, and solve the situation. And there's a, excuse me, there's a book in Leadership Mystique by Manfred K. DeVries that describes a whole section, the importance of emotional intelligence. He says that, you know, emotional intelligence trumps EQ, you know, I mean, your IQ. And people that think they're so smart, but they lack emotional intelligence, suffer a lot. And here, let me read what the quotation says, because it frames a little bit of, you know, psychologically what we're talking about here. Emotional intelligence is the ability to know our own emotions, learning to manage those emotions, and learning to recognize and deal with emotions of others. It's becoming aware of that emotional dimension so that you can keep it under control. Because if you don't, then the emotional oneness in your marriage is going to suffer. Now, before I continue, you know, in the rest to talk about the proactive approach, let me go back here for a second, and let me ask you, from these three treatments, is there one of these three that you have that you are more like inclined to do? Let me start with my own marriage. At the beginning of my marriage, when we were more immature, because I can honestly say that today we're more mature than we were when we got married. Not just older, but wiser. So at the beginning of my marriage, I was the silent treatment. That was me. I would think, okay, I don't want to bring it up because I don't want to create drama. But then it will just fester. It was just there. And I will still be cool enough to treat my wife decently, but not tenderly. So the tenderness was gone, right? And whenever your wife feels that you're not being tender or caring, she can smell that a mile away, you know? And she would ask me, "Are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm okay." You know, and I just didn't want to deal with it because I didn't want to create drama. or because I thought in moments like, okay, I don't know why it's bothering me. It shouldn't bother me. It's no big deal, but it was bothering me. So with time, I had to learn that my approach to try to minimize it was not the right approach. The right approach was to talk about it, and I had to learn to express what I was feeling or thinking, even if I was risking drama, because by keeping it in, I was not going to avoid drama. I was just going to only extend the drama. In the case of my wife, she was more a combination of the defensive and the grenade. A little bit more defensive, a little bit less grenade, but a mix of both. Much more emotional. Um, she would always try to turn every argument into a competition, of who is right, who is wrong, or you did this, you did that, and so here you have the silent treatment and the defensive grenade treatment all mixed in one marriage. So needless to say, we had to grow a lot at the beginning. Our first year was hard in that way, but God gave us grace enough to forgive each other through all those experiences and to learn. And man, it really took a lot of effort, lots of intentionality to grow out of these tendencies and to become more mature. It really took lots of intentionality. And even till today, we still have the same tendencies, but because we're aware of them, now we can work against them. So that's a little bit our experience now. So if you were to pick any of these three, is there any of these three that says, that's kind of like me? Okay, it's okay if there's none of these three describes you, but what's your case, Eli and Trey? What would you say?
I think I'm probably defensive if you can count crying as a defense mechanism. Like, so it's like I'm defensive, but in the sense that I think I often, whenever a conflict comes up, I just begin to cry. And that probably is my defense of being like, look, you've hurt me, like that kind of thing. So I don't necessarily like come out punching. I think I just start crying, which is still the same idea of like, I am showing that I am upset very quickly in an extreme kind of way.
Yeah, I see. So it's not violent, it's more like an emotional just reaction of I'm crying about it, and sometimes that disarms the other person, because it's like, oh, how do I talk about this now? It's like I cannot talk. You are so upset. Yeah. So it can keep the conflict from being addressed. Trey, in your case.
So Pablo, it kind of it resonated with me when you talked about how you were in the beginning of your marriage. So my parents actually argued a lot when I was growing up, like a lot. And it was never like physical violence or anything like that, but they argued a ton, and they would get pretty nasty with each other sometimes. And so because of that, I actually don't like arguing.
Yeah.
And so I tend to most things don't bother me in the first place. So I tend to let a lot of stuff just kind of roll off my back. But it's like when something does bother me, I'm usually just silent about it, because to me, I'm like, oh, well, it's not worth starting an argument because I don't feel like arguing about something.
Yeah. Right. And
Like
here's going to be, it's going to be an important difference as we move forward in the session, that we are not, I think that the shift that needs to occur is not looking at arguing, because arguing is like a negative thing, but we have to start looking at the situation as we need to solve a conflict. See, and we're going to talk about it, and through talking we're going to experience some tension here and there, but the point is beyond the arguing, is the solving of the conflict. And once you think from that perspective, you are a little bit more moved to do something about it, because the same thing happened to me. It's like I was thinking about the drama, the emotion in it, and I didn't like that. Yeah. So I see. For me, it was similar too. So My dad was a little bit more dramatic, and I didn't like that. So I think that's also fed my kind of like I want easygoing kind of approach.
To go off of what Trey was saying from the difference of his parents, my parents just like never discussed things. And so for me, I'm like, we need to talk about this, or it's just gonna brew. Like I think my parents probably both, or my mom at least, did like the grenade style. Like she would let it brew and then every once in a while explode. And my dad just never brought anything up. And so I think that's probably why I'm much more like, no, we need to talk about this, even if I'm gonna cry and be upset. Like we need to discuss.
Yeah, you need to just do it. It's like a little stone in your shoe. It's like you see it's there and it's like, okay, I need to keep walking. It's gonna be okay. But then no, it's not gonna be okay. You need to stop and remove it, because if you don't, it's gonna start hurting your foot. So it's that tension. In your case, Jack and Kelly, is it one of those three that describes you?
That's a really good question. I think like for me personally, Kelly is asking me this question. I think I happen like three situations, three reactions happen to me, but mostly when the age grows, probably prefer silent, because most of that stuff I don't think it's worse an argument or to make it right or wrong.
Yeah. So you sound like Trey that you're thinking of it as an argument. You want to avoid the argument. It's not worth the argument, right? I see. So that keeps you from addressing it. And Kelly?
I think maybe more defensive. I think our situation is more like he's silent. I'm just chasing him for answers.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So tell me what's really going on, and then you have to almost like pull it out of him.
Yeah, just like before we muted, asking like which one is, and then he just doesn't respond, and he was just like joking. I'm a grenade. I was like, I'm sure you're not.
And actually, the silent and grenade could be the two sides of the same coin, because you're keeping it in, and suddenly it comes out, and when it comes out, it doesn't come out pretty. So it can be both. In your case, Brandon and Hannah.
I'll speak to myself first, because this is something that we've actually talked about quite a bit over the last couple months, I think. So there's two things that I've noticed with myself, and then from talking with Hannah, and it's really kind of new over the last year, really. So my two things, I would say I'm probably more on the grenade side. And there's two reasons, or there's kind of two causes from me for saying that. One, I react too quickly to things, and so I don't like stop and like think about things before I react. And the second one is that I always feel that I have to have an answer like immediately. Like if we're talking about something or arguing about something, like I need the answer like right now. And those are two things that I'm trying to work on. So I would say that's more of a grenade, torpedo, atom bomb type thing.
Yeah, short fuse. Okay. And Hannah?
Like silent. I'm more towards to silent. And when we get like a little bit heated, then the more I feel like he is getting angry or mad or out of control, and the more I silent. And then the more he chases after me.
Right.
Try to get the answer from me, or try to make me talk. and then it get really bad after that.
Okay. Right. So either one of you is growing more and more in your own
Yeah.
tendency, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like one's inflating and one keeps like shrinking. and
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah. I can see that. Rachel, what do you think? Which one of these three describes you?
I think silent. When I get like I feel like I get easily hurt. I can get very easily hurt, and then by reacting to it, it's like I close myself. So it's like like some of the sea stars. Oh, some of the, how do you call it? Like a sea animal. If you touch it, it's like you start close and run away.
Oh yeah.
So that's me. So
Okay.
and then when I talk to my mom, if she makes me hurt and I got mad, and I hang up the call. So that's me. I hang up the call.
Yeah.
Silence. I don't want to talk to you
So
anymore.
you shut down. You shut down quickly.
Yeah, I shut down.
Like,
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So what you can see is that all of us have these tendencies, and that's why we need to learn how to solve conflicts, because we did not learn it from our parents. We did not learn it very well from our surrounding, and perhaps you didn't take a class in school or college about this either. So but nothing is going to test this dimension of your life as marriage will. So what you're going to see is that the other approach that leads to closeness is completely different, because it does have emotional intelligence, right? But this is the proactive approach. The difference with the proactive approach is that it experiences the conflict as well, just like any other couple does. They have a situation, creates a little bit of tension, but then rather than letting the frustration grow, what this couple does is that they exercise self-control. And this is very intentional. You see, this is where the person knows that my tendency is that I don't want to talk about it. Therefore, I'm going to have self-control in which I'm going to force myself to have to talk about it. Or I want to start yelling. And because I know that that's what I want to do, I'm going to push myself to exercise self-control, and I'm going to keep attention on my tone, So the person is very intentionally engaged in keeping these emotions under control and not let them hijack the relationship or the situation. And with that intentionality, then the focus of the person is in solving the problem, coming up with a solution. That is always the goal. So in this approach, the couple is never moving forward until they have come up with a solution. What are we going to do about it? If the answer is not there yet, they have not solved the conflict yet. So you see, I want you to pay attention to the contrast between the two approaches, because the first approach goes from conflict to frustration to reaction, right? So in the comments that you guys were sharing, I could see that when you're thinking about conflict, you're thinking about the reaction part, the arguing, the drama, and that's what you want to avoid. So you immediately think of conflict as drama or conflict as arguing. But what we need to shift our mindset here is that we are thinking from conflict to solution. See, conflict to solving the problem. There's a problem that needs to be solved, therefore we have to engage, rather than there's a drama that needs to be avoided, therefore we are not going to engage. You see the difference? So the primary difference of the proactive approach is that it's thinking very clearly that whenever there's a conflict, you have the responsibility to find a solution, and that becomes the focus, that becomes your goal of the whole interaction. So you're no longer focused on drama that needs to be avoided. which is something that has fed, the reactive approach. Here you are focused on finding the solution. So here, this proactive approach has very key ingredients to it that are 5 elements that I want to bring up. Each one of these 5 elements is very important that you understand them, because these are the things that you want to start experiencing in how you are going to approach conflict in your relationship. So the first one of these elements, actually all 5 of these elements are going to be shaped by a whole different mindset than the proactive, the reactive approach. Look at what Proverbs 15:31 through 32 says. Let me read it out loud for you. It says, "He who listens to a life-giving rebuke will be at home among the wise. He who ignores the discipline despises himself, but whoever heeds correction gains understanding." It's describing a person with an attitude. And it says this person has the attitude to listen to rebuke. When I'm being confronted about something, I want to listen because I want to learn from the situation. And what is that kind of person described? As wise. You see? A wise person is not thinking about conflict like, okay, what are you going to tell me? I'm ready to fight. This person is thinking of conflict as an opportunity for growth, as an opportunity for maturity. And that's wise. But also, it says here, whoever heeds the correction gains understanding. See, when the person is in a situation in which there's confrontation about something, this person is focused on wanting to gaining understanding. And that's why the person engages and listens to the correction, because I want to gain understanding. You see, the foolish, proud person didn't care about understanding, and it was foolish. But here, the wise person, precisely because he's wise, doesn't get defensive, but is humble and is prioritizing gaining understanding through the whole thing. So this is the heart of the person, of the couple, that has developed the skill of solving conflicts. This is no longer about me, this is about us. And this is no longer about drama. No, this is about finding a solution. So this person is wise, this person is humble. And with that framework, then this person is going to approach the conflict completely differently. Let's take a look at those 5 steps, which are all shaped by this heart of humility and wisdom. So the first one of these steps is learning to communicate, because this is where the person typically fails. Here, if you are a wise spouse, you are going to prioritize explaining things carefully. You are going to explain your feelings about the issue. That's your goal. You want to explain how you feel about what happened. You are not there to attack. Instead, you are there to explain in a respectful way how you feel about the situation. Therefore, there are certain words that you avoid. Never, always, those words you never use. So in your notes, there's a little dialogue between 2 people that are in conflict. So Trey and Eli, you said that you have the printed notes. So you're going to do a little bit of here acting for us. Okay. So you are going to go to, I think it's page 6.
Mhm.
Okay. So this is a couple that are running late and something happened. Okay, so Trey, you're A and Eli, you're B. Here we go. Okay, read it out loud for us, but as if you're actually experiencing it, okay? Just don't hit each other.
All right. You always make me late and I'm tired of it.
That's not true. I don't always make you late. Sometimes you are late too.
Maybe once or twice, but you are always late.
You're so dramatic. Plus, if you would help me get the kids ready instead of doing nothing, maybe we could be on time next time.
Right. You always have an excuse for being late, but you never want to recognize that you are the real problem.
You never listen to me.
And then you walk away angry, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so do you realize how the guy brings the frustration at the beginning? What does he say?
You always make me late and I'm tired of it.
You see? So this is where the person is failing already because it's not communicating the conflict, the issue well. This is the key. If you're going to communicate the issue, start with I. I feel frustrated because we are late again. You see the difference? What are you telling me? You're telling me how you feel about the issue. You're telling me that you feel frustrated because we're late again, rather than attacking me saying, you always make me late and I'm tired of it. It's like I immediately feel attacked. Therefore, what's going to be my reaction?
You got to defend.
I need to defend myself, and I'm an academician. So one of the disciplines in academics that you have to work with is say what you mean, I mean what you say, especially at a doctoral level. And I work, with my students as well, and I'm always correcting their papers, saying that's not accurate, that's not true, it's not this word, has to be this, So if my wife at any point would tell me, you always do this or that, I immediately start thinking, it's not really always, It's like, it was just only twice last week, that's it, and I'm being the literalist, right? So immediately puts me in the defense. It's like I need to clarify that, look, you're misjudging me here, and it completely takes away from the problem. See, so the goal of this couple that has a maturity and emotional intelligence, they are going to first communicate the issue well. And how do you communicate well? By starting with you. I feel this way because of this situation. Not because of you, but because of the situation. And therefore, I intentionally avoid the words always and never. You see that difference? Okay, the second thing that this couple is going to do is that after communicating the problem well, they will give importance to listening well. And one problem that these couples typically have is that instead of listening, they already want to respond. And what is the reaction that you got in the dialogue, right? What does the person do on person B, Eli, right? It's like immediately you start defending. That's not true. You're also late, so you're attacking now, right? You are late too, right? So you did not listen to what he was saying because the way he said it was not presented well, so I already put you on the defensive. But you see, this person is already trying to engage in drama, not in solving.
Mm-hmm.
When you're engaging in solving, listening really matters. And what do we mean by listening? Well, listening means that you are going to try to understand. That is your goal. You're trying to understand what is the issue. So you're not going to interrupt, yell, attack, or defend. That's not the point. The goal is to clearly understand what your spouse is truly saying. Because once you are able to listen carefully and really understand, now you can move forward in solving the problem. If you have not really understood it, you won't be able to solve it. So that's why listening is so important. There's a technique that is designed to help you listen. And it's the technique of being like a mirror. Okay? So if the person tells me, look, I'm so frustrated because we're late again and I'm tired of being late, you know, that's not good, and da da da. Rather than responding immediately, the mirror technique is asking you to repeat what you understood the person meant. Because when you repeat what the person meant, or you think the person meant, you are in a position for the person to tell you, yeah, that's what I meant. So what does that look like? Some people say like this. So are you telling me that, say, are you telling me that you're frustrated because we're late again? If I hear you correctly, you're telling me that you are frustrated because we're late again. So the person is repeating back what the person heard. That technique helps because sometimes in the conflict, you keep getting into this place of you're not really getting it. You don't understand me. You don't, and you're not listening to me. You know, and the person gets stuck in that place. If you are stuck in that place, use the mirror. Start telling the person what you are hearing the person tell you. Because until you are at that point of really understanding, then you can move on to the next point. You see, so what is my goal as we're engaging in this conflict? I want to listen to understand. And how do I know that I'm understanding correctly? By repeating back what I'm understanding, so the person can tell me whether I got it or not. From that point, what follows is that now that I have listened, I'm not ready to solve yet. And this is where the mistake that many couples make. They just want to solve the issue and move on. There's a step called validation. Validate. What do you think that validate means?
I see where you're coming from. Understand where you're coming from.
Yes. To validate is like, oh, I see where you're coming from. It's like I am giving your perspective the needed affirmation that it needs, so that you feel that you were truly listened and not just judged or just dismissed. You're so dramatic, it's not a big deal. See, if I give you that response, suddenly I'm calling you drama queen, you know, you worry too much, you know, and suddenly I'm never validating you. So validating means that I am looking at the situation from your shoes, from your perspective. And it doesn't mean that you need to agree, but it means that you are looking at the situation from the other person's perspective. So something as simple as, oh, I see it. Okay, I understand what you're saying now. Yeah, that makes sense. You see? So the person wants to feel that you're listening. And if you're going to respond by dismissing, then the person doesn't feel that you listen to them. So validation is looking at the situation from the other person and helping the person feel that you're actually understanding where they're coming from. Now, all the tension and the emotion has completely come down at that point. Because once a person feels validated, it's like, boom, I'm ready now to move on to the solution. So the next step, therefore, is identifying what is the real issue, not what the problem is. but what the real issue is. So here, for instance, you were talking about earlier, Eli, in the example of taking the trash out. It's like, okay, what is the real issue here? Is it that the person forgot? Is it that the person is not being helpful in other ways, and this is just a pattern? Is it that the person is forgetful and we need another system that needs a more solid reminder? What is really the issue? Because if we're going to solve it, we need to understand what the problem really is. So here is where the emphasis is really understanding what the issue is. And if you don't understand what the issue is and you want to move on because you're tired of the drama, then you're not going to solve the conflict. How can you solve something that you have not understood? So after identifying, that is when you move on to solving, because now you understand what the problem really is. Now you understand what can be done about it. You see? So you have reached the point of solving the problem. And the conflict is not over until you have a solution to it. So I want you to go back to Eli and Trey. I want you to go back to your notes, and you're going to now be the mature couple. They went through the oneness training with Pastor Pablo. They learned how to solve conflict now. So start on page 9. Look at how they are approaching now the whole thing. And of course, this is a little bit overemphasized just to get the point of what these parts look like. But you will get the point. Can you read it?
Okay. I'm frustrated right now because we were late again. You did not plan ahead, and your lack of planning put us behind schedule. It makes us look like we do not care about the people, and that is not right. We have to do something about it.
So you feel frustrated because I did not plan ahead and I caused us to be late today. And you think that being late shows people that we do not care about them?
Yes, that's what I mean.
I understand. I had not thought that our lateness could send the message to the people that we did not care about them.
Yes, it does, especially if it happens more than once.
I apologize for causing us to be late. I know that it may seem to you that I did not plan ahead, but actually I did. What caused me to be late this time is that I did not know that the phone technician was coming today. That completely affected my plans.
I didn't know that the phone guy came today. Now I understand why you were still not ready when I arrived to pick you up.
It's so frustrating. I wish they could tell us the exact time they plan to show up.
Next time, if something unexpected happens, send me a text or call me so I'll know in advance. Maybe we'll have to drive separately so at least one of us is on time.
Okay.
Okay, so reading it may seem a little bit kind of like structured, right? But by reading both examples, what is immediately something that you noticed?
I would say it's something immediately is that it's just the tone of the entire conversation is different than the first one. The first one was much more spirited than this one.
Right, because they were reacting, attacking, defending, attacking, right? So what was the spirit here?
The spirit was more of understanding, kind of all around. Even when I started off, it was like, hey, I'm frustrated because this happened and this is why I feel this way. And I was like, so what you're saying is this, right? And I was like, yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it was much more of a conversation and understanding from both sides. Like even when she said, well, the reason I was late is because the phone guy showed up, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I didn't know that he came. So that's why now I understand why you were late. And then the resolution was, okay, well, maybe next time if something like this pops up, let me know so one of us can be on time. Like it's kind of the representative for our family.
So now they came up with a solution to
Yeah.
to the issue that was a little bit deeper than just being late, right?
Mhm.
What did you learn from it, Eli?
I think honestly, this,
Yeah.
I think what's funny is in the first statement when it says you did not plan ahead. I think it's really great that in your next statement you showed that she was using self-control. Because if someone looked at me and was like, "You were late and you didn't plan ahead," if they said even that statement, I would have been like, "Excuse me, I did plan ahead."
Right.
But other than that, it seemed like relatively like it could happen.
This gotta happen to us sometimes. Not this scenario.
Yeah, but where I feel like he has said to me already, like something like, so you feel like when I do XYZ, it shows XYZ to other people. Because I think that's where, at least in our relationship, a lot of grifts have come, like culturally, where I'm just like, oh, well, when you do that, it looks like this, or he thinks the same thing. Like, because we're from different areas of the country, different things are perceived differently in those those different areas.
It happens so often. It's kind of like the one thing I think that came early on was how she corrects me sometimes.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was just me. And so, I'm from Louisiana. Like as a kid, I've been told like you don't correct adults, you don't correct people because it's rude. Like just in all around.
Yeah.
And so when I went to visit her family, and I sat in the living room, and it was like her mom and dad, her aunt, her cousin, her brother, and they're all correcting each other,
Always.
like circular, like. And then it even got to the point where I don't think that's right, and everyone's pulling out phones to look stuff up, and I'm like, oh, I get it now. I see where you get it from.
Or like a family, like you were talking about correcting the people who you work with in their studies, or like a family who fact checks each other all the time. And so like we don't think it's rude, but for him, he was just like, why do you keep doing this? And I'm like, oh, am I doing that again? I don't even know.
Yeah, like and you probably know because like being from the South, like that's just something that it's like universally seen as rude.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So there is that where you start seeing things on the surface, like, well, you're being rude because you're correcting me, yet actually in a context that's not considered rude, and now you realize, oh, this is about cultural differences. Oh, now so you start going deeper into understanding what the issue is, rather than one of rudeness is one about cultural differences and what they represent, right? So,
and even with this scenario being late, that's been me actually.
That's why I was like, he needed to be B and I needed to be A.
Yeah, because there's been times where I've been late, and the same thing kind of happens where either something pops up right before I walk out the door, or I was gonna do something and the plan changed, and so I adapted, but I don't communicate that to her. And so I remember one day we actually got into an argument about that, and she was like, "Well, you said you were gonna be here at this time, and you weren't. You're like an hour late or something like that." And I was like, "Well, I told you I was gonna bring this, but when I went to go do this wasn't there. So then I had to change, and I had to go to this other thing first, and then I had to go this other thing." And she's like, "Well, you didn't tell me any of that." And I was like, "Well, I was trying to get it done before I got here to be back on time." And so it's kind of like that, almost same scenario happened. I was like, okay, well, in the future, when things pop up, I'll try to let you know so you can adjust your expectations. Because that's also a cultural difference too. Like that's not really a thing that exists where I grew up of like people being because you're like, slightly later or anything like that. But you had to have conversations like that before.
and what you see in this example, which is what I want to bring up to this lesson here, is that the conflict is not over until you have a solution. So you don't end a conflict just because you're tired or because you hate drama. No, push yourself to, did we get a solution or not? So if we got a solution, okay, great. Now we are done. Sometimes there are certain things that happen where you need perhaps to disengage a little because it's too emotional, and maybe kind of cool down and then come back and talk about it. But also, in conflicts that are a little bit, more complex, or there's tension that you can perceive is, very present. One of the most beautiful things you can do, most helpful things you can do, is to come together before God and pray. And say, God, give us wisdom. We're feeling very emotional right now. We really need to tackle this thing. Would you help us? Or you end the conflict by praying. Say, Lord, we're feeling distant now. Would you help us get close again? Remember that your marriage is not just between you and your spouse. It's between you, your spouse, and God. Therefore, bring him into your conflict resolution. Because God did say, does anyone need wisdom? Ask me for it and I'll give it to you. So some couples feel like that's so foreign to their experience, but that's because they never really grown in godliness or wisdom in this area. So don't hesitate to bring God into the picture when you feel like you're stuck in something or you're not seeing clearly. So you can see, therefore, that in these 5 steps, that drives the conflict into finding a solution. So let's take a quick review of what are these 5 steps, and you tell me what they mean. Okay. So the first one, communicate. What's the point there, Hannah? Let's start with you.
The point of communicate, to talk about the feeling, so the other person can understand how I feel at the time about the issue.
Right. Good. So you start by saying, I feel this way because of this situation, right? And you start explaining how you feel about the situation. What are some words that we intentionally try to avoid at that stage?
Never and always.
Yeah, so we avoid those. Once you do that, you're in a much safer beginning to engage. The second part was to listen. Kelly, what's the main point here?
Is to listen to understand, not to speak first.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. So you want to understand. That's the main goal. And what are some techniques that help you make sure that you actually understood the other person?
You repeat what other person said, and you validate it.
Okay. So you I mentioned that the next part, which is validate. What does validate mean?
Validate is to understand or confront other people's. Make sure you understand what other really meant, and you understand from the other person's perspective.
Right. So you look at it from the other person's perspective, and once you are in this stage of really listening to understand, you're much more focused on the issue, right? So it really helps you because you're no longer focused on the person or on the frustration. You're really trying to be focused on the issue. The next stage is to identify, and that's kind of like very straightforward, right? That's like, okay, that's identifying what the core issue is. What is at the root of the problem? And the last part, then we solve it. Now we have a plan of what we're going to do about it. When is the conflict, engaging in the conflict, done?
And the solution.
When you have found a solution, right? So if there's no solution yet, do not disengage. Talk about it until you both have understanding of what the problem and the solution is. That will help you so much because it keeps the problem from lingering. See? So And also it keeps you from finishing, tense interaction with the feeling of we went nowhere. We're still stuck where we started. You don't want to have that sense either. So the conflict is not done until you have solved it. So you see, there are two completely different approaches to how you solve a conflict or how you face a conflict. One is reactive, one is proactive, one is characteristic of people that are proud and foolish. The other is characteristic of people that are humble and wise. So not only what will you do will be the question, but what kind of person do you want to be? You see, do you want to be wise and humble? Do you want to be proud and foolish? That's the bottom line question. So with this in mind, we have, let me see, the true and false. And this true and false I'm going to show you is a little bit more extensive than the one you have in your notes. So I want you to look at the one on the screen, and you can take a picture of it to kind of review it again later with your notes. So true or false? Okay, you get to answer for yourself. True or false? I solve conflicts in a godly way. Next, when we face a conflict, we normally end up arguing and getting upset. Next, I use a defensive reaction. Next, I use the silent reaction. Next, I use the grenade reaction. Next, I communicate clearly without attacking or getting defensive. I listen carefully with the desire to gain understanding. True or false? I validate the other person by looking at the situation from his or her perspective. I identify the issue at the core of our conflict and avoid pursuing rabbit trails. You know what a rabbit trail is? Rabbit trail is an idiom to describe when you get away from the real issue and you start going into all these other things that are not the issue. So you need to come back. It's like, that's not the point. This is the point. So come back to this. We're not talking about, your mother-in-law for what happened 10 years ago. We're talking about this now, right? So rabbit trails is whenever you go into other topics that are not the core of what you need to be focusing.
When the rabbit hops.
What is it?
When the rabbit hops everywhere.
Yeah, rabbit hops everywhere. Exactly, that's the idea. Our confrontations only end up when we have reached a solution. And the last one, and this is kind of a commitment that I believe you need to give each other. Now, will you read that commitment out loud with me? From now on, I give my spouse the freedom to confront me anytime about anything. I will avoid getting upset, defensive, or attacking. Instead, I will listen to seek understanding so that we can solve our conflicts in a godly way. Do you give each other that permission? You see, it takes two people with that commitment to really, get there. So I hope that through this experience, you are going to grow in your skills to know how to solve these conflicts and how to then engage in a way that will bring you closer emotionally rather than apart. I would like to finish this session then with the one short story that I want you to listen to, because this is a person that was shaped by certain experiences in life that were already stirring anger within. And you're going to discover that sometimes those unresolved things that we bring into the relationship do affect how we address conflicts, and that not all the conflicts are just with ourselves or with each other, but sometimes we have conflicts with God that have a whole dimension in how we are feeling about things. So pay attention to her story. Her name is Jessica Long. She's an athlete that has won several gold medals in the Paralympics. So let me stop here. I mean, actually, I'm gonna change the share to this, I believe. Let's see. Here we go.
It's pretty intense because you're sitting there and they're calling each person and they just somehow disappear through this walkway. And then they call your name and you walk out and it's this beautiful, like, clean pool. There's just 25,000 people and you can hear the roar. My heart rate is starting to pick up. All of Team USA is cheering for me. I take off my legs, I take off my warm-up jacket, and I get up to the block. I clap 3 times. I hope it somewhat intimidates the rest of the competitors a little bit. The official says, "Take your mark." Take your mark. Go. The crowd goes wild once I'm midair, and I hold my streamline, I pick my head up, and I just start to race. A lot of people are changing positions. I feel like I need to breathe because I'm gasping for air, but I know if I take that breath, it's going to affect my race. I always know that at the start, I'm gonna be behind. Seconds matter, tenths of a second matter. I know that I can catch up. Coming in for the wall. This is when the entire race comes down to the ending. But I just put my head down, and then all I hear is just this, like, quiet peace. When I was born, I was put up for adoption by a young 16-year-old Russian girl. And due to a birth defect, she just wasn't able to care for me. During this time in Baltimore, Maryland, there was a family, Steve and Beth Long. They went to a church meeting and they saw a picture of me. And they were told that this little Russian girl has leg deformities and really needed to be adopted. And my mom just said, you know, we knew you were the child that God wanted us to adopt. So they decided to adopt me and another little boy from Russia. Went to the orphanage and got us both. Right away, they took me to see a specialist about my legs. And with what I was born with, it's called fibular hemimelia. So basically means I was missing all the bones in my lower legs. I did have a foot with 3 toes that they decided to amputate 6 months after I was adopted. So I could be fitted in these little prosthetic legs and learn to walk just like everyone else. When I think back on my childhood, I didn't feel adopted. I just knew I was angry. Angry that I didn't have legs. Maybe that's why my birth mom didn't want me, because I didn't look like a normal person. I was missing half my body. I felt like such a burden to my parents in Baltimore, you know, because every time I grew, I had to get a surgery. I had to get the bone cut back. And that was excruciating. I can't think of a single childhood memory that, you know, we weren't always at church or with our church community. And what I heard a lot of is that God made me this way. And God always had a plan for me, and God loves me, and I didn't like it. I knew I didn't like it. I knew I didn't want anything to do with this God that made me this way. To top it all off, I was born on leap year. So all of my life, the calendar would skip me every 4 years before I had an actual birthday, February 29th. And I think in my head as a little girl that just solidified how I felt about myself, is that I was non-existent. It didn't seem fair, because I don't think I knew what I did wrong to have to keep going back in for surgery. I didn't think I could even cry in front of my parents, because I thought if I cried, that somehow they would send me back to Russia. No one could help me. And it just hurt all the time. So eventually, I found sport, and I found that I was really good at sports. I found that swimming, I excelled in swimming. And when I first joined a swim team, I was 10 years old, and I was the only disabled swimmer on the team. Most people didn't know I was missing my legs until I got out of the pool. And I kept going back because honestly, I just liked beating these girls with legs. And it started to fulfill something in me, just earning love.
Is it too good to be true? I want this so much, but don't know if I can trust you.
In my first race, I turned and breathed to my competitor from Israel, and I remember saying, I did not come here to get second. And we touched the wall, and I had just won my first Paralympic gold medal as a little 12-year-old. And I was the youngest to ever go, the youngest to ever win a gold medal. And I think that that was the start of it. I started getting sponsorships and winning awards, signed a deal with Nike, and I'm in Sports Illustrated, and I'm getting commercials. And I wanted to be perfect in everything that I did. There was one year I had 18 world record breaking performances, and I didn't slow down. Reached the next gold medal, set the next world record. That's where my worth was. My worth was in swimming. My identity was swimming.
I'm stuck in the
But at the same time, I was just broken and sad a lot. I had developed an eating disorder, really pulled away from my relationships, my family, and I realized that I had no control over my life. One summer night, I was at my Friday night youth group Bible study, and I'm sitting there, and I just think I just couldn't do it alone anymore. I just got up and I made the walk to the front, and I found this woman, and I just said, you know, I want to give God my whole heart for once. And I prayed with her, and as soon as I prayed, it was the first time in my entire life that I felt enough, and that I was actually a part of God's family for once. And it's crazy, right? Because it doesn't just get easier. I just realized that God was prepping my heart for what was about to come. I'm in London at the games. I found out that they had found my birth family over in Russia. All of a sudden, we were approached by NBC asking if I wanted to go back to Russia to meet my birth mom for the first time. Meeting my family, my birth mom, was something I dreamed of my entire life. So I decided to do that. And I took my little sister Hannah with me. It hit me all of a sudden, as soon as we landed in Russia, that maybe my birth family didn't want to see me. I felt really scared. Why did I come here? Why did I do this? And then we took an 18-hour train ride, 18 hours, and everything is covered in snow. I just kept reapplying lipstick and makeup. And Hannah said she didn't even put the lid on the lipstick because she was like, you just were so nervous. You just kept applying. And I think it was just because I wanted to present myself so perfectly yet again. So we pull up in front of their little purple house, and I took my sister's hand, and we walked together on the snowy, icy sidewalk. And you could hear my birth mom, Natalia, and my birth father were crying. Like you could hear tears. They come out of the back door, and my birth mom, she's just burst, just crying, sobbing. She just kept saying, my Lena, I think she was saying my daughter. But she's crying, my birth father's crying. I was starting to cry, and I was like, I don't want to cry. And something she just kept saying was that she couldn't forgive herself for giving me up for adoption. And I think if I had not accepted Christ as my Savior, I don't think I would have forgiven her either. But it was in that moment that I realized that, God has forgiven me my whole life. And I forgave my mom. I wasn't upset with her. And it was this moment that I've been angry my entire life. I didn't feel worthy. I didn't feel enough. That I just realized, oh my gosh, like God really had a plan this entire time. Coming home after Russia, it definitely, it was a heart change, but it also opened up a lot of other questions, and questions that I had to really come to terms and talk to God about, questions that I thought I already had answered. And I realized that it's okay to have those questions. It's okay to talk to God about it. Since accepting Christ as my Savior, I don't have to just go to God and have it all together. He knows that I don't have it all together. And I think it's something I still fight. I still fight that feeling of being in control. And I am constantly reminded every day that I need to give it to God. Every day when I put on these 2 prosthetic legs, that are heavy, and they still hurt me. My leg still cause me pain. And I think it's honestly this really cool, beautiful reminder that I can't do it on my own. As determined as I am, I just can't. Coming in for the wall. This is when the entire race comes down to the ending. But I just put my head down and just pictured God almost racing alongside with me when I swim, like he's just there. And when practices get tough or races have been hard, I just call on to him, like, God, like this is hard, this is really hard. And I just feel, you know, just keep trying, Jess, like I'm here with you. My name is Jessica Long, and I am second.
So a couple of thoughts about her story and why I thought it mattered. What was her approach to the conflict that she was experiencing? Remember, she said that she felt that there was something wrong with her, and that the God that had made her was not a God she wanted, that she liked, and she had all this anger building inside. Which one of the three approaches to her conflict did she have? Was she the defensive, attacking? You know, was she the silent treatment, or was she the grenade treatment?
Silent. Then she says she doesn't even want to talk in front of her parents.
Yeah, she didn't want to talk to anybody. She wanted to talk to her parents about it, and she didn't want to talk to God about it either, because she basically didn't like God. And so on the surface, she was very successful, right? She was accomplishing all these things. But what was going underneath all that surface?
She says she always feels sad.
Mm-hmm. There was a sense of sadness, a sense of feeling that she was not good enough, right? All of these things. And when she met her mother and father, biological parents, she said something that she realized that if she did not know God, what is something that would have happened in her life in relationship with her biological parents?
She wouldn't have been able to forgive him for putting
Right.
up
So
with him.
she would have never forgiven them. And that's very important, because one of the things that I want you to realize that bitterness, which is the lack of forgiving, it's almost like fuel that can make any little conflict like a big fire. And sometimes if you're in a relationship that seems like lots of little things are becoming big, you have to stop and wonder, is there bitterness in my life? Are there things that I have not forgiven? Because a lack of forgiveness is going to come out in all of these destructive ways down the road. So what was the thing that allowed her to forgive her parents?
It was Christ, how she felt that God had forgiven her throughout her whole life. So she was like, if God is able to forgive me through my whole life, then I can forgive my mom.
Mm-hmm. And then she found freedom in that, right? And that's again what we talk about. A relationship with God is not a religious thing. This is a real thing. And when you become part of God's people and God gives you his forgiveness, he transforms you from within. And this transformation that she's experiencing, that she's able to forgive her own parents for something so sad, she wouldn't have been able to do it unless she had this relationship with God, you see? So that's why when we are talking about oneness, all these dynamics that are taking place are rooted on the spiritual foundation, right? Otherwise, you're going to be stuck in certain cycles that you don't seem to be able to get out of. And there was one more thing that she said I find insightful at the end. What was her approach to God now as a more mature follower of Christ? How did she describe her relationship with God? From being that God that she didn't want to talk to, that she didn't like. What was it like now?
I think she said God has it all together, even I'm not together.
Uh-huh. So it's okay for me not to have it all together. I'm broken, right? So she now was able to approach God honestly with everything. She no longer had the anger towards God or feeling that she needed to be perfect to approach God. She had that sense of, I can really communicate with God freely. He doesn't need me to have all the answers. So that freedom, see, is what I want you to experience when you're talking about your own marriage and your conflicts and it's like when you do not know what to do, when you are feeling lost, when you're feeling like you are growing apart, you come to God in those moments, you make God really part of your relationship, because when you do, then he empowers you to grow through those challenges. So with that in mind, I just want to remind you, we talked about last week, if you have not done the Enneagram test, I really encourage you to do that, because that will give you insight in how you process things, how you are wired. But also, if there's things in your life where, like today, you realize, I also have bitterness in my life. I also have unforgiveness. People that I still, till today, I have not been able to forgive. If you have things like that in your life, then I encourage you to set an appointment with me so that we can address those. Because again, that is going to be like gas for conflict and making fires out of them. You need to be relieved from that weight that you are carrying if you have bitterness in your life. So God has made a way for you to be free from that, and as we just heard in the story today. So with that in mind, we are going to conclude the session today. It's 9:18. So I always like to conclude the session with asking you, what is one thing that you get from today's session? But rather than asking all of you, what if one of you wants to tell us something that you get from today's session that you take home that was important? What's an insight that you got from today?
Yeah, I can say a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, I think one of the things we just try and reinforce what we have already learned before at Watermark is about the communication, how to address the conflicts, especially like the tone or how to phrase what we're gonna say, like use the different steps, trying to repeat to make sure we listen correctly, and then to validate the issues, and then find a solution for that. So that's like positive way to address an issue rather than just react to those issues. Yeah. So
Yeah.
as we just newly married, I think we have already experienced so many questions or issues we have to discuss with each other and resolve those. Sometimes have disagreement. Naturally, we have that. But we just learning how we should pay attention to the way we communicate with each other to make sure things are stay on the positive side. Yeah, I think that's the biggest takeaway from today.
Yeah,
right?
that's very helpful. So you have a roadmap for how to address those things and be proactive. And remember, the first year of your marriage is typically the hardest, because that's when you are learning to face these things and in a way that is edifying. But if you do not know how to do that, then the relationships are going to feel toxic, and you don't want that, right? So, but what some couples mistakenly do in that first year is that they try to avoid every possible conflict because they want to have a nice, environment, and eventually that's going to backfire because you're not being real and you're being fake. So what seems to be a nice environment is a fake environment. And actually, on one occasion, I had to work with a couple that ended up divorcing, where it was very sad because from the very beginning, their marriage, on the surface, they had supposedly a very nice environment. But once we started getting everything that was going on inside, we just discovered it was all fake. So people that are people pleasers can fall for that very easily. So don't be surprised on your first year that you are going to have conflicts on things, but that's just, think of it as a process for oneness. It's like you are, God is shaping your different parts so that you are able to become more cohesive, like growing pains. Okay, so don't get scared if the first year has all these different conflicts and stuff. You will be so glad if you address them well and tackle each one of them as they came, because then you are building a foundation that for the following years is going to make the following years much more enjoyable. So thank you for sharing those insights. So we're going to meet again next week, Monday at 7:30, and we will do part C of this lesson, which is now learning to develop emotional intimacy in the relationship. And with that, we will finish this particular lesson, but then we will continue after that with other topics on emotional oneness. So I hope that you had a good session today. Rachel, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I was thinking like why the conversation, the second one, after Pastor Pablo's lesson in line Trey's example, it feels structured because it does not have the normal tone of affection. Yeah. So like when I communicate, like even at work, right, something happens, I will say, oh no, I'm sorry, I don't want you to feel this way. And I also will say like, this is what I wanted. So I will put the vision or the goal there. Is like, I want we to have a good relationship, and the both of us can have an environment that can grow mature. So like emphasize the goal of what I want to happen and what I don't want you to feel this way. So like they feel loved and etc. So I get like the kind of affection, and then the goal, and I think that's God always what God communicates to. Oh, I love you. I want to save you, and then I want to have a relationship with you, etc. So like he's affectionate, and he's like, this is what I want for you too.
Right. So that's a good insight. Is that whenever the context allows for, define what is the vision you have for the relationship, so that when you are engaging in the conflict, you know that, look, we're on the same team here, we are friends, we are having it. So to remind the other person what you intend. That's good insight. So I hope that you are a little bit more equipped today than you were before you started by engaging with these topics. And we will see each other again next Monday at 7:30. And remember, you can invite friends. Just share the link with them and just let me know, so I will know if anybody new is joining us. But if anybody joins us at this point, just make sure that they have the links to the previous sessions so they can also see the other videos, okay? But naturally what happens is that the more we advance in their training, every time you feel like, wow, this was so helpful, oh, this was so insightful, and you want everybody to go through the same insights, especially if you have friends that are struggling, right? So feel free to involve the people that you feel will benefit from it. So have a great rest of the evening. We'll see you next Monday at 7:30. And I'm gonna stop the recording here of the session as well. Bye.